Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, we're talking tech. We are really talking about not your computer, no, not the keyboard, not the mouse, not those things, but internet and IP and things that I get confused about. And so that's where it's going to be so much fun because my guest is going to explain these things to us. So please join me in welcoming Chris Parker to our program today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me on, Deb.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you. So Chris Parker is the founder of whatismyipaddress.com, a tech-friendly website attracting over 6 million visits a month. Launched initially in the year 2000 as a hobby, it became a side hustle. Then in 2014, when Chris was laid off, he devoted himself full-time to the website. Today, whatismyipaddress.com is among the top 3,000 websites in the U.S. and has been mentioned in the media by CNN, Fox News, The Washington Post, and others. Chris recently appeared as an expert in a nationally syndicated news story about romance scams. And trust me, we're not going to let that go. We're going to come back to that. So please welcome again, Chris, to our program.
Again, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk with you and your audience today.
Great. Well, you mentioned, let's kind of go back a little bit. I always tell people we're going back in the Wayback Machine. How did you really determine that this is your passion in life?
It's funny. It really was not my passion in life, which is kind of funny. It was just a solution to a problem I was having.
Okay.
And it was never planned to be a business. It was never planned to be a passion, but I think it has become a passion over time because it was something that I was doing. It was exciting. It was interesting. And I didn't really have any obligation to it. It wasn't like I grew up going, oh, I really want to own, a technical website. Ooh,
right.
Really exciting.
Yeah. Ooh.
But I think just through the process of running it and being a techie guy, I really loved kind of the hands-on physically with the servers and the networking stuff. And so to me, it's just the process has been a lot of fun to me. I think that's part of why it's become a real passion for me.
I love it. And, as I mentioned, you started off with it as just kind of a hobby. And then it has evolved into a full-time business.
Yep.
So, let's kind of talk through that process a bit because you were kind of an entrepreneur that was forced to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Because it started, as you said, as a hobby and you had never intended for it to be full-time. So, what did you learn through that process?
I think the funny thing is I think I learned that businesses can arise out of things that you're just doing. In fact, most of the business, I created a couple of websites that were e-commerce and were revenue generating, and all of those failed. And it was the side hustle, passion project, just interesting hobby, which is the one that turned out to be the most profitable, the most interesting, and most successful of all the things that I've done. So it's almost, I don't want to say it was an accident, but in some sense, I kind of just went where the opportunity led.
Right. We could be Bob Ross. It's a happy accident. But I love this because a lot of people really do. They have something they do for fun. And then they're like, ooh, I could make money from this. But they never planned on that. It's not like those of us who went, I'm going to start up a business. And so we immediately started with a business plan, with making sure that we were registered with the Secretary of State. And yes, we should do those things, folks. We've talked about those a lot on the program. But since you did it as just kind of a hobby, how did you really turn it then into a true business?
I think kind of one of the turning points for me was at the time that Google started this great service called AdSense, that you could throw ads up on your website and you didn't have to deal with individual advertisers, you didn't have to deal with contracts, you didn't have to negotiate rates. You just put a little bit of code on your website and it was like magic. You could, if you had traffic, you could start earning money. And I think that was the point where it's like, okay, this is like dining out money, and then it became, oh, this is like vacation money. And as it started to approach, like, wow, this could be like, it's not as much as I was making at my daytime job, but it was no longer pocket change. It was like, oh, this is serious money. I wonder if I could actually, by spending 40 hours a week doing this, could I actually really grow my revenue?
Trying to make it work.
Yeah, if I spent more time on it, could I actually make more money?
So, then did you have to go back and turn it into a business? As I said, register with the Secretary of State, do all of those things?
Because I had these other kind of business opportunities and websites that I was launching, I already had at the time it was a partnership.
Okay.
I ended up dissolving the partnership, and then once I hit a certain revenue number, I dissolved the partnership and relaunched as a corporation for tax. There was a tax reason of doing that versus an LLC or sole proprietor, but I did that in. Switched over in about 2000, I think it was 2009 or 2010 to actually be a corporation. Because at that point it was like, okay, this is real money now. It's just not play money anymore. It's time to take this serious now.
And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people get confused about is at what point does it become real? And Etsy, people doing crafts might be, a really good thing, they're doing crafts, they're having fun. And then, wow, they start making some pretty good money. And so my advice is that's what you have a CPA for. And that's when you ask them, okay, when do I do that? And obviously there's liability issues depending on what you're doing, and some things like that. And for some people, it really will just be a fun thing that they never turn into a real business. And we're not going to tell the IRS if they don't report all that income, and all of those various things. But don't push it, folks. If you're making $100,000 on your Etsy store, you probably need to report it.
They're going to find out somehow.
Right. But there are obviously steps that you need to take. So what were some of the mistakes that you made along the way?
I think, kind of the core mistakes for me were not, for a long time, even once I kind of incorporated, is not really treating it like a business.
Okay.
I didn't have good business processes in place. I was still kind of treating it like
a hobby.
This is it's just me. And as I got to the point where I needed to scale things up beyond just me, I realized, oh my gosh, everything is so custom, so intricate, so designed by me for me that I'm still even years later trying to unwind things to allow other people to post content to my website. So most people these days, their website is up and running on WordPress, and you create an account and you hire a new writer, you create an account for them, and they can go in and just start creating content, and you have someone who's an editor who approves it, and you as the business owner don't even have to touch anything.
Right.
It can be really great. Well, because I'm such a geek, I designed everything from the ground up.
You used HTML.
And so I hand-coded everything, and even my security was hand-designed. So it took multiple, you got to VPN into here, go through this, go to that. And so the process of creating new content on my website could only be done by me. And it has created a huge bottleneck for me. Now that, it's like, now that I have other people writing, they're producing stuff faster than I can code it. And it's like, it all comes down to, okay, is this now the best use of my time. It isn't really the best use of my time anymore. When it's a hobby, sure, a
Right.
couple hours coding, that's fun. Now, it's not a good use of my time.
Right. And I think we see that a lot of times when we start a business is we are doing it all. We're the accountant. We've got, we're doing the bookkeeping, we're doing the marketing, we're doing the writing, we're doing everything. And then it might not be that it grows to where you're hiring other people, but it grows to where you need to have assistance doing that. You might need to actually hire somebody to do your marketing, hire somebody to do your invoicing, all of these various things. And if you really did set it up as, hey, this is just me and I'm just having a good time doing this, it's really hard for somebody else to come in and help, whether it's a virtual assistant, an employee, or a consultant, whoever.
Yeah, that's so true. I a few years ago hired a business coach, and in our, I think it was the intake call, he asked me, so what do you, how much are you paying your, because we were talking about talking through expenses and whatnot. He said, well, how much are you paying your accountant? And I'm very proud of myself.
Yes,
I'm like,
I do it myself.
I'm doing it myself. And he's like, oh, so you're paying, so let's do some math here. This is how much you make a year.
Right.
Let's divide it by 2,000 hours. Let's assume you work 40 hours a week. Okay. So this is how much an hour your time is worth. Actually, before that, he asked, well, how much, how much, there's that, how much are you paying your accountant? Well,
Right.
nothing. And he goes, well, no, you're paying your accountant this amount of money per hour. And he goes, and how much does your accountant have a CPA? I'm like, well, what do you mean my accountant? I'm doing it. He
Right.
goes, okay,
Yeah.
so you're not a CPA. And he's like,
You're
I'm
not
like,
an
no.
expert.
Oh, so but you at least went to college for accounting, right? I'm like, oh, no. Okay.
I
so
went to Google.
I went to Google. So he was like, you're paying C-level hourly rate to someone who has absolutely no experience doing something. That was like this epiphany for me of like,
Right.
oh my goodness. I like, to me, I looked at it as like, well, I'm saving money because I'm not paying someone to do this. When in fact, I really had to shift the mindset of like, well, no, you can pay someone who's highly competent, very skilled at this for a quarter of your hourly rate, who will do a better job, more effective, and they'll do it right, and they'll
Right.
free you up to do what's core to your business.
Right.
So that was kind of this mind shift for me of like, okay, I've really got to figure out how to leverage other people's skills and what they're good at and what they like to do.
Right. And that is hard when you're just starting out, because you're thinking, or, not even when you're starting out, you are thinking, I can do this. Why should I pay someone else? Website design is a great example of that. I like tinkering on my website. And, I see, and you're laughing because, but I kind of have the rule. If it's going to take me more than 15 minutes, I need to hire it done, because that is just a better use of my time and my money. Because if it's more than 15 minutes, that means I probably broke something. And of course, then I'm going to fix it. I'm going to figure out how to fix it. And so then hours later, I still don't know what I've done. And I still have to hire someone to do it.
Yeah.
So if I had just started by saying, I don't know how to do this, this is beyond my skill set, or even not beyond my skill set, just beyond what I should be doing, then I should do this. I have a producer for this program. Can I do what she does? Of course. I did it before I had her, but it's not the best use of my time to be doing what she does. And she does a fabulous job. And I know she probably does it in half the time that it would take me.
Yep. And that's exactly the same way. I've started to work with people too. Like for me to get on your show, I work with a company that they're really good at, matching guests and hosts up together. Because guess what? After the first, if I were doing it after I got three rejections, I would have been like, nah, I'm out of here. I don't want to do this. I feel
bad. Or you would have wasted hours having fun researching it.
Yeah. And not actually getting anything done.
Right. You listened to a whole bunch of podcasts. You looked at a bunch of websites. 2 of them were okay, 10, but you listen to them anyway, and I think that's probably one of the things that small business owners have just got to get over yourself.
Yes.
It's so, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not smart. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It actually means that you're smart because you're going to go have someone else do it. That, I always say, we don't try. I don't try and change my own oil. I don't try and diagnose any medical things. I go to the experts for that.
But it's weird. But when it comes to business, for some reason, as entrepreneurs, we feel like, well, if I can't figure this out myself, then I'm not really a good business person.
Right. Well, and I think especially when people are starting out, they have that mindset that, I should be able to do it all, or I shouldn't be starting this business.
Yeah.
And
trust things to reliable people.
Oh, I know. And it is, as I said, it is hard because you only have a certain number of dollars, and paying someone to do something that you could do is difficult. But CPA would probably be one of the best examples, or legal. Sure, we could probably do that ourselves, or like my website, I can do it wrong, I can break it, and then not only did I waste my time, it is going to cost me more for them to fix it.
Exactly.
And so it's just and finding that team really, that's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found is that I'm too easily impressed by people in a sense of like, oh, sure, you seem like you're really good at doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's been hard for me to build up a good team because I'm just not that. I don't have that skill set of hiring remarkable people. Some people have that skill set, and that's awesome. But it's one of those things that I've struggled with over the years of figuring out who the right person is based off of like an interview.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay.
Well, and and I can see that because as a small business owner, sometimes we go into business for ourselves because we don't want to be a manager. We know we're not good at doing some of those things. So, hey, I'm just going to go into business for myself. Well, then you still have to do it.
Yes.
Tricky. Well, let's talk more about your website. Because it breaks my little non-technical brain. And so I want to talk about it because it is something that is very important for a variety of reasons. So it is called whatismyipaddress.com. So let's start at the basic. What's an IP address? Because it's not thebusinesspowerhour.com.
So the easiest explanation, there's two good explanations for an IP address for non-technical people. It's like your postal mailing address, that if you want to receive a package or you want to receive a letter, it doesn't get, person just doesn't write Deb and throw it in the mailbox. You need an address to be able to get it to you.
Okay.
Or to your office building. Or you could think of it like caller ID or a phone number. I can't just type Deb on my phone and it knows which Deb to call and what the number is.
Right.
So that's what an IP address is. It's the internet equivalent of that.
Okay. And it's very specific, right? So like my IP address different than another computer in my house?
So the answer could be yes and no. It gets technical. But for the vast majority of people, when it comes to home, you have one public-facing IP address, which the entire world, when you go to a website, when you chat with somebody online, if you're at home using your home internet connection, you have one public-facing IP address. Your router, the little box that your ISP gave you, allows you to connect up multiple devices.
Oh, okay. So it has the address.
Correct. So the address that you're really seeing publicly is the IP address of the router. Then the router goes out and hands out an internal IP address to every machine on your network. So your phone has one, your laptop has one, your internet-connected thermostat has one. Okay, Alexa's off. I can say her name. Alexa has one. Google has one.
She's going to all of a sudden speak to us.
Every one of those internet-connected devices in your house has an IP address within your own network, but they all share that same one that your ISP gives to you.
Right. And again, it's numbers.
Correct.
It is kind of like you were saying, like a phone number. So it's 25.130. Something. I mean, it's all numbers.
Correct. And it doesn't mean anything to anybody but the computers.
Right. So why do we care?
Well, your IP address actually kind of reveals more about, or often reveals more about you than you might expect.
Okay.
So in your case, I know you're looking at my website,
Mm-hmm.
and on the homepage, you can see who your internet service provider is.
Okay,
If
so
you're-
that's mine. That's actually my information. That's not
That is
a
your information,
ah.
and that's how the internet kind of sees you.
Okay.
But in that, it's not that the numbers have any significant
Mm-hmm.
inherent value in themselves, but there are, lots of databases out there,
Mm-hmm.
and so they start building up geographic information.
Okay.
So if you're in California, websites that websites that you visit know that you're in California often based solely on your IP address. It's not that you told them you were in California,
That's how that works.
but
Uh-huh.
it's someone like, I'm not saying that Amazon does this, but e-commerce, when you buy something,
Right.
you're connected with their website, so they know your IP address. Well, you want something shipped to you, so you enter your zip code. They now have an association between where you live or where you're having the package shipped and your IP address. And, companies try to monetize everything that they can get their hands on. They sell that data to data aggregators who get it from thousands of websites and apps that collect your location for your weather and stuff like that. All that kind of gets aggregated, and they now know you're likely in this particular city. And in some cases, like when they get the data from your weather app on your phone, that location might actually be right down the street from you. It might actually pinpoint right at your house,
Right.
which can be a little disturbing if you think about it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that concerns people is security.
Yeah.
How close can it get? I knew someone who had their some information hacked, and it was all online, and they were able to track back through with the police to the city where it happened.
Yep.
Now, that was a bad thing. I mean, and they could have gone even further. I mean, they could have probably figured out, what house it was,
Yep.
or what business or whatever. But like you were talking about, we were thinking, they're selling us things, but what if they're tracking our address? One of the big things is people, Facebook, kind of a different little connotation here, but people are always saying, don't post on Facebook that you're going to be gone. So, from your IP address, I mean, if somebody could get my address, whether I'm here or not, they might say, I see that she's recently probably bought a TV and she's done this and she's done, so we're going to go pay her a visit. And so I think that's what concerns people about IP addresses.
Yeah, it's for a lot of people, there's this perception that if you're on the internet, you're anonymous.
Right.
And the reality is you really aren't unless
Right.
you're taking specific steps to try to be anonymous. Even then, it's really questionable if you can ever truly be anonymous, because you have to connect up to the internet somehow. There's
Right.
some initial connection somewhere.
I know the anonymous browser part. Okay. If you're watching something naughty on your computer and that's why you're doing it, okay, it's still tracking you.
You're being tracked somewhere. The reality is you're being tracked somewhere. There are some great tools that help journalists, that were originally designed to help journalists and people in oppressive countries. They connect up to this system, and it bounces their traffic all over the world so they can communicate with people safely.
Right.
And unfortunately, those types of platforms get used for abuse. As anything that's designed to do good gets co-opted to do evil.
Yeah.
At some
Somebody
point.
goes, ooh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So, is there a way for people to stop being tracked?
There are a couple of things that people can do, and one of them is not incognito mode on your browser. People often refer to that as porn mode. All it does
Or
is
shopping mode. I was thinking shopping.
It could be shopping.
At Christmas, you're going to go into that mode, so the people aren't looking to see what presents you bought. So we'll put it in a better mode.
I'm going to use that one going forward. It's
Yeah, we
Christmas
like shopping mode.
because you don't want people who have access to your computer
Right,
to see
to
what
see-
websites you
right.
visited.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all that mode really does. It doesn't protect It doesn't hide you from any website that you're visiting.
Which clearing your cache and all that would get rid of that anyway, but that's
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's the automated version of that. That way you don't have to let the kids figure out what you bought them for Christmas.
Right.
Well, I like that one. I'm definitely using that one. So that does not really provide any type of protection. There is the platform that I talked about previous that was designed for journalists. It's called Tor. It's a special browser that you use, and it makes everything that you do really, really slow. And
Right, because it's adding a level of something in there.
because it's bouncing the traffic all over the world through servers at public institutions and everyone who's, intentionally participating in this, and it just results in you slowing you down, and it only protects certain things that you do. It doesn't stop everything. The most common thing that people do is use what's called a VPN, a virtual private network. That allows you to set up a secure connection between your machine at home and the VPN company's server, whichever one you choose, anyone in the world that they have it. So you want to look like you're in California, you choose a server that's in California. You want to look like you're in Israel, you choose a server in Israel. And what that does is it routes your traffic securely between you and their servers. So if your internet service provider is looking, they just see encrypted traffic between you and this server. Government's watching you, they see the same thing. They can't see the content of what you're doing. And so that allows you to kind of pop out on the internet wherever you want to, conduct your business, do what you want to do.
Right.
So that's what most people end up doing.
And we were talking before the program, as we're recording this, it's April, so we're still in COVID lockdown.
Yep.
And this is airing in June, and then of course, people listening to it and watching it whenever. My assumption, and this is a total assumption, is that many businesses, after they're told, hey, you can have your employees come back into the office, they're going to go, you know what? We don't need them in the office. This whole work from home thing really worked pretty good. They got their work done. That's, one of the big concerns with people who are working from home is, are you getting your work done? Okay, so you've been a grown-up, you've gotten your work done. Might be at a totally different time of day. I mean, there's going to be all sorts of things that come. But I think a lot of companies are going to go, you know what? We don't need to have this office space. We don't need to be paying for it. When we can have somebody, we might have to buy them a laptop, we might have to pay for their internet, all these various things. But they're going to want, and obviously it's going to depend on the company. Some of them aren't going to care, but some of them really will need a very high level of security. So is this something that they'll be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate products are fundamentally different than the consumer products.
Okay.
Because when it comes to the corporate product, the big reason behind that is you want your employees to be able to connect up to your office and to be able to access shared resources that are within your corporate network.
You need them to access the shared drives and all of that good stuff.
And so it is the same technology, but it's providing the endpoint is your machine at home and then your company's office.
Okay.
Kind of one of the pros and cons with that is it's good because the company can make sure that the websites that you're visiting are company approved,
right.
and you're able to access those resources.
You're not shopping during the day.
But that's where honestly a lot of people end up shooting themselves in the foot is, well, they're now sitting, well, I'm at home, no one's looking over my shoulder.
Right.
Let me go shopping, let me go to the news site. Well, all that traffic is going through your employer, so they see that you're shopping, they see that you're on the news site. But for security purposes...
And you're probably doing that when you're sitting at your desk, too. Let's be honest.
Probably. It's just a question
if people couldn't see your screen, you might have gone and checked Facebook.
It's just a question of, because there's more people working at home now, will the company make a decision to ratchet that down and say, well, we really don't want that behavior happening, so we're going to specifically prevent it. There have been some interesting studies saying that actually ends up hurting companies when you do that, because people need
we
that.
need a brain break.
Yeah. And so that's up to the company. The companies very easily could decide to do that.
Right.
But it's something that, if you're a company that has people starting to work from home, that you really want to think about, okay, how do I protect, my company data when it's on a laptop outside of my office, and making sure that I'm not leaking access to my customer database and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah. And clearly there are some companies that security is a huge issue. Financial companies, maybe it's a pharmaceutical company, and so they've got, things, or just, a product, you're a company developing a product. You don't want your competitors to get it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably been one of the concerns. But I think a lot of companies haven't quite understood. They've thought, well, we can buy you a laptop and that'll make it okay.
Yeah.
They don't understand that, between point A and point B is the problem.
Yeah. And even the people that are solopreneurs, if, not that anyone's working in a coffee shop in April,
Right.
But back in, a few months
going to
ago or a few
Starbucks,
months from now,
right.
people would sit down and perfectly fine going into a coffee shop, jumping on the free Wi-Fi and starting to do business and sending files and moving stuff around. My fear has always been, great, my mom and pop cafe, they make the most amazing, roast beef sandwich, but they're probably not a network security specialist making sure that their router is secure and that the bad guys aren't hopping on their network and spying on customers.
Right.
That's where, as a consumer, a solopreneur, entrepreneur who's doing work in coffee shops, and maybe you're traveling around the world,
Right.
That you really want to start using a VPN to protect that traffic, to make sure that the people at that table next to you aren't watching what you're doing online.
Right. Well, and it could be even worse. I mean, you could be online, working on paying your bills for the month, accessing things that you really don't want people to have access to.
Yeah, and my general philosophy has been, I don't do those things away from. There are certain things that I'm very paranoid about, and there's those other things that maybe I should be more paranoid about that I'm not. But I don't do, I don't log on to financial institutions when I'm outside of my house. There are technical ways that people can still kind of pretend to be those financial institutions when you're connecting to networks that you don't have trust in. So I always do those stuff at home exclusively.
Right. And it is, some of it's just, as you were saying, kind of a common sense thing. You don't go to Starbucks and transfer money while you're sitting there. And, my phone will say, hey, do you really want to connect to this network? And I always say,
why not? Yeah.
And, but many other places that you go to, you're not going to get the reminder. It just connects, or maybe you have the provider that does it. I have, we have Comcast, Xfinity, and one of the benefits is that anytime I am near a Wi-Fi network that is theirs, I can connect to it.
Yeah.
And so that's great. That's fun. Except that means I've connected to my neighbor. I've connected to the people I don't even know. And so, of course, I went in and I turned that feature off so that it doesn't do that. Because I kept thinking, how can I be having Wi-Fi when I'm not anywhere near my house? Oh, that's why.
And in the vast majority of cases, you're probably safe, but
Right.
it only takes one time of not being safe for identity theft or data theft to happen.
Right. And the vast, like, as you said, the vast majority of things are safe. I mean, you just figure the millions of transactions that happen every day, very, very rarely is there a situation.
Yeah.
But the key is, it really doesn't take too much just to make sure that you're not one of those people.
Yeah.
So
You don't want to be a statistic.
right. So let's talk about some more things that we can do. So again, why do I need to know what my IP address is?
So there are times when you're talking about having issue, logging into your bank or things like that. There are certain services that we log into or that we have technical problems with, and you call tech support. Hey,
And they'll say, what's your IP address?
what's your IP address? Because they're wanting to make sure that you're connecting from your device at home,
Right.
that they're able to diagnose, is this a problem with our network or is this a problem with your network? So a lot of times it's for diagnosis of technical issues.
Right.
Then you have issues of, the gamers at home that are playing online video games. If they want to run a server and they want their friends to be able to connect to them, they often need to know the IP address of the server. And I think, these days there's so many ways that your router can be compromised, your computer can be compromised. There are a lot of people that use my website just to confirm that nothing odd has happened. That they start up the computer in the morning, they check their IP address, and it's either, yes, my VPN is running because I live in California and it's showing that I'm in Bulgaria, or it's, I live in California, great, it's showing California and not Bulgaria, so no one has access to my computer and is routing my traffic through their servers. So a lot of times it's that confidence of knowing something is either on because I want it to be on, or something's off because I want it to be off.
Right, right. Yeah, I had a situation with someone that I was trying to email, and it was continually saying that there was an issue, and I needed to go to X website and verify it. Oh, okay. Well, I really did need to email this person. So, I finally went there because, I ignored it for a while. And the really funny thing, I could go to Gmail. Of course, Gmail was happy. It was hunky-dory. There weren't any problems sending Gmail. It didn't like my business address. And so it asked me for my IP address, because then it knew, okay, that computer is safe. We're going to trust that computer.
Yep.
And, and I would say I was thoroughly annoyed because first of all, it was like, this is a business email account. Why is it? I don't understand why it had no problems with Gmail, but it didn't like my business account. And I told this guy, I'm like, if you paid for this service, I don't know about this. But then the other thing was I had to do it with like my phone. I had to do it with multiple things.
Oh, wow.
And, and I said, did you have an issue? And he said, no, somebody had sold it to him. And I said, well, if I were you, I would turn it off. I said, because how many times are people just going to go, okay, I'm not even going to try it. I am not going to go through those steps of having to do this. And so I'm just not going to email you. Therefore, I'm not going to work with you.
Yep. And then we all get those notifications from time to time of like, we get an email from Facebook saying, hey, we saw a new login from a new device. Yes, you logged
in Bulgaria.
And here's the IP address. So you can often look and say, if you're on your cell phone, your IP address changes. In your home, your IP address can change over time. But what you're really looking for is the internet service provider associated with that IP address mine. So if hey, I'm always using AT&T at home, and all of a sudden it's, Bulgaria Telecom.
Right. You're like,
someone from Bulgaria, someone has gotten into my Facebook account. I need to change my password yesterday.
Right.
So it could be that confirmation when we get those messages of knowing, yes, that was me that accessed the account, or no, it wasn't me who accessed the account.
Right. So if I have someone's IP address, can I put it into your site and it will give me some information about them?
Yeah. So if you have an IP address of someone else, or you get that notification of like, hey, this IP address logged into,
you've logged in from Bulgaria,
your bank account or whatever, you can put it in the site, and we can generate. It's a fairly reliable location.
Okay.
In terms of like, the vast majority of time, it's within 25 miles. It's usually not, hey, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 any street. We don't have that. There's not that type of granularity on the data. But if it's Southern California, hey, I know it's me. Or if it's Bulgaria, I know it's not me. And then information about who's the internet service provider, local, city, state, things like that. And we do have access to a number of databases that can tell you, is there abuse associated with this IP address? Is there a history of, hey, this IP address has been used to post spam to forums and it's trying to hack accounts? Okay, I don't want to deal with that. Like,
right.
I either don't want to communicate with the person who gave me that, or gosh, someone evil has gotten into one of my accounts, and now I know for sure that it wasn't me.
So then what would I do?
That's the tricky question.
I know it's something evil, but then what?
The usual thing, it's really a practicality thing for most people. It's sure, I can't tell you the name of the person, what their home address or what their phone number is.
Right.
If you want that, you've got to hire a lawyer, file a lawsuit, and spend thousands of dollars. and maybe you'll get that information, maybe you
Right.
won't. Because if they're outside the US, okay, now I got to hire international lawyers.
And did you really need that? I mean,
And
yeah,
did you
that's,
really need it? So in most cases, I think it's more for most people, it's just a confirmation of something. But if you're a business and you have an IP address of someone who got into your database
true.
and stole customer records, I'm willing to pay a couple thousand, willing to pay the money to
Right.
the lawyers to go after it and find out who that specific individual is. But for most people, it's the peace of mind or lack of peace of mind of knowing, is it me or is it somebody else? I wish I could tell people, yeah, you can, that romance scammer and you got the IP address from their email or they clicked on a link and you got it there. Now you can find out who they really are. Chances are you can't.
Right, right. But it is giving you good information.
Correct.
Like you said, we can get it down to a city, or so then that might give you an idea. Oh, okay. Well, if this was from this specific area, I probably know who that person is.
Yeah, I've definitely had people who've contacted me through the website saying, "Hey, someone's saying nasty things about me online, or someone's corresponding with me from an email account that I don't recognizing, and they obviously know personal things about me because of what they've said. I've gotten their IP address. Can you tell me which of my friends it is?" Well, I can't tell you that, but
Right.
if
But I
you
can
don't-
tell you that they're in Cupertino.
Correct.
Okay.
And you're like, oh, I've got that, estranged ex-relationship
Right.
who lives in Cupertino. It's
Right.
probably them. And so you can go after them and directly say, hey, knock it off.
Yeah,
Leave me
stop
alone.
that. Stop that, or I will go further.
Yeah, but without involving law enforcement,
Right.
it's really, you're only getting general information.
Right. But yeah, I mean, if you call somebody and say, you know what, we dated, we broke up, sorry about that, but stop this.
And we do have people that are running, e-commerce stores, smaller ones, generally not like Amazon, who will check the IP address of every order they receive. Because what they don't
Right.
want is, gee, the order originated from Lagos, Nigeria, and it's shipping to, Tustin, California.
Right.
Well, why is someone from Lagos, Nigeria buying something from my website?
Interesting.
Gee, it's the biggest order I've ever had.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that was one of my businesses. I got caught with that scam. Is that someone had placed a fraudulent order using a stolen credit card, a stolen FedEx shipping number, FedEx
So they knew what
account
they were
number.
doing.
Oh, so they knew what they were doing. But by the time, the credit card charge got reversed, at that point I started looking back at it. I was like, oh gosh, the person from Nigeria, who claimed to be in Southern California, placed this order. It was absolutely fraud. Like,
Right.
So there are things that, that if you're the Etsy person or you're a small business you have a small e-commerce store, you can check the IP address of your orders that you're concerned about to find out, could this be that user or is it from outside the country
Right.
if all your business is domestic?
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit more about VPNs. Why should somebody, like me, even care?
Well, so there's three general core functionalities of VPNs, or the three core reasons why people use them. We talked about the security aspect in terms of protecting your traffic, making sure that no one can see what you're doing, and you might be using a VPN server that's in your local community. The issue for you is, I just want the security of it. There's also the people that want the privacy aspect of it. When I go online, I just don't want anyone to know that it's me.
Right.
Security is less important, but it's really about privacy. I'm a gig worker, and I travel. I travel around the world while I'm working, but I want everyone that I'm working with to think that I'm in Southern California. So
okay.
I'm always going to use a server in Southern California. So if they ever look at anything, I look domestic. I look like I'm a domestic worker as opposed to an international worker.
Oh, interesting.
So some people use it for that, or it's I don't want my government knowing what I'm doing, because there are people out there that live in oppressive regimes where they can't
Right.
use Facebook, they can't talk freely about what's going on in their lives. And then the third one is often for like U.S. expats that are outside the U.S. that want to watch Netflix. Netflix doesn't allow you, if you're outside the US, to watch US Netflix. And there's things like the BBC One. If you live in the UK, you can watch, you can stream BBC for free. But if you're outside the UK, you can't. So you use a VPN that makes it look like you live in the UK, or a VPN that makes it look like you live in the US. There's a little bit of cat and mouse, because once those entities find out, hey, that's not an individual, that's a VPN server,
then you lose your account. But
usually you don't lose the account, but you can no longer access it from that
Right.
server. So there's a little bit of cat and mouse stuff going on there. But that's another reason why people use it, because I just want to be able to access stuff that is, we don't allow users. I see it a lot with gambling sites. People want to play poker,
right.
but we only allow users from these countries. Well, but I don't live in one of those countries.
right.
I want to create an account and play. So people create an account using a VPN and are able to access those
Interesting.
services.
So does a VPN cost?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. The good quality services cost money. And
You get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for. It could be a few dollars a month, upwards of $10 or $20 a month, and sometimes it's about the bells and whistles and features. But that's kind of the normal range, is $5 to $10 a month. There are free services, but like anything that's free, you have to ask, well, why is it free?
Right. Yeah. Is it so basic that it's not really doing anything?
Well, and it's more of an issue of, like, VPNs require expensive infrastructure. There have to be servers that are on 24 hours a day all over the world.
There's a reason there's a cost.
There's a reason there's a cost, because it does cost money. It's kind of like you can't keep your house cool and run your air conditioner without using electricity. There's a cost involved. So if there's no cost, you have to wonder why. So there are VPN providers that they have a pay business. Their business model is, we charge for our service, but they offer kind of like a free sample, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
Where we'll let you use just a little bit of data before we say, that's it, for you to get used to it and to understand what's the service like. Oh, I like it, I don't like it.
Right.
And their whole goal is, we're doing this to upsell you to our paid product.
Right. Right. Which makes sense.
But there are entities out there that offer totally free VPN services. So you have to ask, well, how are they making their money?
Right. Are they actually getting my information?
And so that's what you have to look like. Either they're selling your information, they're somehow monetizing you and your surfing behavior. Some companies have resorted to you're using their VPN service, and you're going to a non-secure website. Many sites out there, blogs and stuff like that, aren't secure, but they have ads on them. What we're going to do is strip off that website's ad code, and we're going to drop our own ad code on it. And so they're now getting display ad revenue. They're basically stealing it from the website, because your traffic is going through their servers, and they're kind of watching everything that you do and saying, how can we monetize it? You click on Amazon, they run it through their Amazon affiliate link. They're doing all this really kind of, and they don't tell you that they're doing. It'd be one thing if they told you, this is what we're doing, this is how we're paying for the service, but they don't tell you.
Right. Right.
Or there was one service called Ola that you installed this VPN on your phone, and hey, I've got VPN.
Right.
Well, every phone that was installed on was an exit point for somebody else.
Oh, no.
So if your phone is, someone else is using your bandwidth to go to different websites and commit crimes and watch stuff. And so all that is getting associated with your IP address. That's why you don't use a free one unless you know why it's free.
Well, and of course, from a business perspective, it is a business cost.
Yes.
And so that's perfectly fine to be paying that as a business cost. But, and I guess what I was getting at was, if you are providing it for your employees, back to, we've got people working from home now, we need to be providing these things. There's a cost.
Yes.
Don't be thinking you're going to do this cheap, folks,
No.
because you might actually be costing yourself more money. And so, just know, hey, there's a cost to this.
Yep. Whether you're buying the physical hardware to do a service, or if you're paying for the software for people to do it, using one of the commercial VPNs.
Right. Well, speaking of scams and things, I said this in your bio. You recently were interviewed about a romance scam.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So it was really fun. One of the things that I've been doing over the last few years to grow my business is working really heavily on PR and
Doing things like podcasts.
doing things like podcasts and documenting and creating a media page on my website about all the places, all the high profile places that my site has been mentioned: CNN, Fox News, Washington Post, the podcasts that I've been on, and all of that kind of has built a PR as well as, hey, this person is willing to do these things. And so in part of doing that, I've gotten more and more contract writers saying, hey, I'm writing an article for Mint. And can you give us a quote about this? And so as I've started to get those sort of things, I actually had someone from Scripps in San Diego contact me and say, hey, could you talk about romance scams?
So it wasn't that this happened to you. See, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, Chris?
No, I was not the victim of a romance scam, and I was not the person committing the romance scam.
Okay. We can go forward then.
I was talking from the perspective of, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure if we're meeting somebody online, are they really a real person?
Right.
Are they who they claim to be? And how to kind of avoid being caught up in a romance scam. And so I had my 15 seconds of fame.
I love it. And we see things like that in the news all the time where, someone thinks that the person they've been corresponding with is, the future Mr. or Mrs. Wonderful. And typically then what happens is Mr. or Mrs. Potential Wonderful says, oh my gosh, can you send me some money? And that's typically one of the things
I lost
that
my wallet.
happens.
My kid needs surgery. There's always
I
an emotional
need
plug
money.
to it. Yes.
And then of course there are much more nefarious and obviously very illegal things that people do.
Right.
But I think it's just it's coming back to one of those things where things are going to happen. We can't hide. This is just, we're not going to go live in the mountains of Idaho. Although right now that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Probably not.
I know. I'm going to digress here for a second. See, we get squirrel. The memes that, for a long time go around that show, the cabin, and it says, would you live here without internet for a month for $1 million? And, people are like, yeah. And then of course now it's, you won't wear a mask to keep grandma from getting COVID. But yeah, would we live somewhere without internet? I don't know. I mean, but the point is we're so used to it.
Yep.
That's how we watch TV. I've had 4 phone calls and 3 text messages as we've been talking. And I mean, all sorts of things. And so it's just a matter of common sense and being smart and taking precautions. You can't hide, and so why not just make yourself safe?
Yep. And that's one of the things that I've really started building content on the website is really trying to help people be aware of all these scams that go on out there, educating people on what you need to do to just be safe. Watch out for the coronavirus scams. They're going to come out. Right. They're going to come out of the woodworks, and people need to be aware of it, or they're going to fall victim to them.
Right. And you do have lots of different resources on your site and, and so it's great. Like I went in, and did the speed test. And then of course I look at it and go, well, I don't know what those numbers mean. So I'm always doing that. I'm like, well, it looks good. I mean, they're high numbers. So, but there's obviously lots of things. And so tell us a little bit more about your site.
Yeah. So it's been around for a whopping 20 years. It's an internet dinosaur. I think it pre-exists Google, maybe.
I love it.
Maybe not. Google might have been around before then. I'm not sure their launch date.
They probably weren't part of Alphabet at that point.
Well, yes. I think they were called Backrub initially. So most of the tools on the site revolve around privacy and security. We have a tool that has become less effective over time, but is still works in a number of cases where if someone sends you an email, you can look at some of the technical details of that email, drop them on the website, and we can tell you, in some cases, where did that email originate.
Right. I got an email last week that said, I think we're related. Okay, no.
And I need to have some money to come visit you.
Yes, yes. Cousin, no. And of
No,
course, he
no.
based it on my last name. I'm like, I'm married, dude. There's no way we're related.
Oh, that's funny. That is too funny.
So, of course, I don't respond. That's my response. I don't respond.
And that is by far the wisest thing to do when we get interactions from people that we
Yeah,
don't
just
know. It's just delete, don't
don't
respond. I
engage.
don't
Don't, yeah.
just don't engage. There was a study recently about people being scammed, and they found that actually there were quite a few people that they were aware that they were pretty sure it was a scam, but they still engaged with the
Right.
person.
They were telling them, go away or whatever.
And once they got engaged,
Yeah.
it actually led to them being scammed.
Right.
So rather than just going, yep, that's a scam, delete, hang up, close the door.
Yes. Don't tell them, just nah. Because part of it is it's like a lot of the spam emails. The initial thing is they're confirming that they got a real person.
Yep. And so by answering that phone call and having a conversation with that person, you may be inadvertently providing them more information about yourself. You've confirmed that, yeah, your name is Bob, as opposed to some other random name. So unless you're really, really careful about what you're doing, you're often opening yourself up
Right.
to more risk by engaging. Even if you think it's a joke, you're often disclosing information about yourself.
Right. But I love on your website, you've got information to be able to check some of those things out.
Yep, yep, and that's the idea behind the site. Initially, it was, hey, this is a technical thing, but it's like, well, how can I make this stuff useful
Right.
to a wider and wider audience? How can I communicate these things in a way that is not? It was funny. One of my writers, he goes out to do research, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you need like a PhD to understand 90% of what people are writing about IP addresses out there. We need to write it for the
We
person
need to
who's
write it
not
for
a
me.
network engineer."
Me.
And that's what he's really one of my lead writers really good about that, of because he's not a technical guy, he's able to do
He
a
can
really
dumb
good
it
job.
down.
And I don't want to say dumb it down, but explain it in a way that
Right.
makes sense to people who aren't technical.
Right.
Maybe this is a good closing business tip is when we're in an industry, we often use acronyms and things that are very industry specific. I used to work in life insurance industry, and the owner of the company says, we're doing some website. Oh, we need to make sure everybody knows that I'm a CLU. I'm like, well, what's a CLU?
Your clue.
Chartered life underwriter. I'm like, oh, wow,
Right.
that sounds interesting. What is it? Oh, it means I have 30 years experience. I'm like, well, that's what we need to put down
Right,
because
right.
no one's going to know what CLU means.
Right. Right.
So it's the same way with my site, is trying to use terminology that everybody
Right.
understands.
It's not it. It's
Yes,
IP.
exactly.
Well, so is there a fee to use your services?
No, my website is entirely free. I am entirely supported by ads and affiliate deals.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, and I had tinkered a bit on some of this. Like I said, I did the speed test and and some other things, and there wasn't a fee there, but
No.
but yeah. So it's interesting and see now. Of course, I'm going to be one of these. I'm going to have to go and play. There's going to go the rest of my day, squirrel. Because I'm just geeky enough to want to see this. But as we were saying, there are some very important reasons why you need to be looking at a lot of this.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it revolves around just keeping yourself safe online, being
Right.
aware. You're using a technology. You need to be aware of the basic fundamentals of it.
Right. And if you're a parent, you need to make sure that things are safe for your kids. Back to getting emails and things. I mean, is it really a 16-year-old boy who's emailing your daughter, or is it the 30-year-old man?
Oh, creepy.
Yeah. Who's asking for money? All of these various things. And then, of course, from a business perspective, you need to make sure that your data is safe. Do you want your client list taken? Do you want your product information taken? Depending on what you do, you might have some proprietary information there.
Yeah.
And then from personal perspectives, like we were saying, keeping your bank account safe, all of those various things.
Absolutely. They're all super, super relevant, super important for people to take into account. It's kind of like terrorism. as a defense, we have to get it right
Right.
100% of the time. The bad guys only need to get it right once.
Right.
And so they just spray millions of email addresses, millions of phone calls.
Somebody's going to respond.
Yep.
I always like the people that, that will say, well, who was stupid enough to answer the email that said, hey, if you give me your bank account, I'll send you $40 million. Well, clearly somebody was, or they wouldn't keep doing it.
And this scam has been going on for decades. The first occurrences were done via fax machine to accountants at corporations.
Right. So cool. Well, Chris, if people want to connect with you and reach out to you, how do they find you?
Sure. The best way is to visit whatismyipaddress.com. They can submit a support ticket there if they have technical questions. They can always email me if they have other questions. I'm on the media page there, and engage with us on social media.
I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts for everyone?
I think, the biggest thing we need to be aware of is, our security is our responsibility. Your telephone provider is not thinking about your security. Your cable company is not thinking about your security and your privacy. These are all things that we personally need to take ownership of.
I love it. And I encourage everybody, just go and look at the site, see some things that are there, make sure that that you are safe. For me, VPN, I need to really do the whole VPN thing because I'm bad about going to Starbucks and going, oh, okay. Or hotels, right? We're always logging into the hotel website and all of these various things. So, it's simple, folks. We're not talking about a complicated process.
Nope. It's very simple to use.
Great. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having a wonderful time talking with Chris Parker. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.